Syntax and semantics. Man-made languages have an arbitrary syntax and semantics. Nature's language, mathematics, set by the principle of sufficient reason, has a necessary syntax and necessary semantics. Man-made languages can tell you nothing about reality because they have nothing to do with nature's syntax and semantics. Humans just make up nonsense. They are mythos people, emotional storytellers, not logos people, rational analysts. The syntax of reality involves the Euler circles and waves that we have been discussing. But what about the semantic level? All individual waves and wave combinations also have an empirical, semantic level, i.e. every wave or wave function is associated with a unique experience. Some experiences are colors, smells, tastes, sounds, tactile sensations, and so on. Some are thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions, intuitions. A precise syntax produces a precise semantics. The meaning of each wave or wave function is the precise experience it conveys. All waves and wave functions are expression of energy, and every energy is experienced in a different way. We are energy experiencers and interpreters. That's all we are. Mathematics is not dry, abstract, unreal syntax divorced from everything else, as so many people erroneously believe, but an extraordinary, infinitely vibrant kaleidoscope of experiences. It's laden with thoughts, feelings, sensations, and intuitions. It's an ocean of empiricism, semantics, sitting on top of an exact mathematical framework, syntax. Everything we experience has a mathematical underpinning. Experiences are impossible without the math to cause them, support them, and convey them. Empiricist philosophers, including scientists, never once consider what an experience is, where it is located, how it is produced, how it is conveyed, and what experience is it. Only rationalism can explain empiricism. Empiricism certainly can't explain rationalism. Reality comprises arrays of waves within monads, and arrays of monads within the collection of all monads. The singularity, all monads, contains myriad singularities, individual monads. Waves from individual monads interact with the waves from the collection of all individual minds, and thus produce everything we individually experience. Subjective, private reality is created by our individual minds. Objective, public reality is created by the collection of all minds. The last drop. It's essential to draw out every last drop of the ontology and epistemology of the basic Euler circle. Everything, all of math, science, philosophy, psychology, and so on is implicitly present in the Euler circle. We need to be able to attribute an ontological, epistemological, metaphysical, and physical significance to every single aspect of it. Once we entirely reinterpret the concept of the wave and of electromagnetism, which is all about the frequency domain, versus gravity, which is all about the space-time domain, we can fully reconcile Maxwell, Einstein, Schrödinger, and Heisenberg. There are countless different ways of mathematically modeling systems, but in ontological mathematics, they always have to include the primary ontological features of waves and wave containers, monads. In ontological mathematics, one of the defining numbers is c, the speed of light. It is every bit as important as a graph and every bit as fundamental to mathematics. It is not a constant of physics, but of mathematics. The zero condition, the condition for anything to have a zero extension, is for it to be traveling at light speed, as per the Lorentz transformations. Virtually no one has understood the ontology of Lorentz transformations. What they actually say is that anything traveling at light speed, an absolute condition, belongs to a different category of existence from anything traveling below light speed, a relative condition, which can be varied. You can change speed through space and speed through time as much as you like, but you can never reach c. Waves moving at c are frequencies outside space and time, without extension and without mass. Space and time waves moving at less than c are moving in space-time, hence are associated with extension and mass, including imaginary mass and also imaginary energy. Non-locality embraces anything traveling at c. Non-locality signifies the frequency domain, rather than the local spacetime domain. Non-locality signifies the dimensionless domain of things traveling at sea. Locality, by contrast, signifies the dimensional domain of things traveling at less than c. Waves traveling at sea move axially, while everything else travels non-orthogonally, along non-axial radii. The axes are orthogonal, while everything in between, in the non-axial region, is non-orthogonal. All explanations should be brought back to waves, monads, autonomous collections of waves, and their properties. Waves are the basic explanatory units of existence. What science and academic mathematics is lacking is an ontological understanding of waves. Waves are not abstractions. They are actual things with a syntax and a semantics, and they have two domains available to them. One, dimensionless and orthogonal, the frequency domain. The mental world, and two, dimensional and non-orthogonal, the spacetime domain, the material world. Independent waves, decoupled waves. When sine and cosine waves run orthogonally to each other, they are decoupled. Neither is contaminated by any trace of the other. When they run n-orthogonally to each other, they become coupled, they pick up properties of the other, and this coupling produces the phenomenon of spacetime waves. All of the forces of science are buried in the coupling of sines and cosines to form spacetime waves, which, when they are highly compressed, produce spacetime particles, and also the opposite process involving the decoupling of combined sines and cosines to form light waves, outside spacetime. The Big Bang involved a vast coupling of sines and cosines, thanks to non-orthogonal phase. The formation of black hole singularities and also the Big Crunch singularity, which undoes the Big Bang, involve reverse engineering by decoupling sines and cosines, making them orthogonal once again. Science fails to grasp this because it ideologically rejects non-spacetime existence. It has no scientific grounds for this rejection. This rejection is driven purely by philosophical considerations. It is obvious that science's own equations refute it. Scientists insist on misinterpreting these equations by slavishly adhering to the fallacy of materialism and empiricism. The graph of eternity, the whole of ontological mathematics, revolves around Euler's circles as the ultimate eternal reality, the fundamental root of ontology and epistemology. Look at the first quadrant, the upper right section of the circle. In this quadrant, we can produce a series of Pythagorean triangles where the radius serves as the hypotenuse. This is true until we reach 90 degrees. At that exact point, the series terminates. Then we have two independent radii, two rival hypotenuses, if you will, and the previous series necessarily ends. In other words, there is something truly extraordinary about the axial radii. They have a fundamentally different character from the other radii, a different ontology. The Lorentz transformations reflect this, as does Einstein's special theory of relativity, in respect of the special absolute status of light. Light, mind, is an axial property. Non-light, matter, is a property of a non-axial region. There you have the whole mind-matter problem resolved right there. And its solution is owed to none other than the first mathematician, the wondrous Pythagoras, and his equally wondrous triangles. Time-speed. As soon as you grasp that time is simply imaginary space, you can treat space and time on an entirely equivalent footing, with neither being privileged over the other, and neither having a special status, or requiring special exceptional treatment. Science currently supports a 4D model of the universe, with 3 spatial dimensions and 1 temporal dimension. This is automatically offensive to a rationalist. With time being equated to imaginary space, we can immediately replace 1D time with 3D time, and thus have a 6D universe, with space no longer being privileged over time, and time no longer being treated as a weird exception. Because we can't perceive imaginary space, we continuously misinterpret it. Mike Hockney in his God series of books analyzes this issue in great detail. Once time is equated to imaginary space, we can do for time everything we can do for space. So, just as there is a speed through space, so there is a speed through time. Because we are near enough stationary in space, we are all moving through time, i.e. imaginary space, at close to light speed. We therefore live in a time-like environment, an environment dominated by time. Yet our perceptions are linked to space, hence we see ourselves in an essentially space-like environment, an environment dominated by space. This is a classic example of how our unreliable, fallible human senses continuously deceive us, and why we should always be highly cautious about the sensory experiments upon which science chooses to predicate itself. Just as material things can be defined with regard to space, so they can be defined with regard to imaginary space, time, i.e. we have temporal materialism as well as spatial materialism. Just as we have real numbered mass defined with regard to space, we have imaginary numbered mass defined with regard to imaginary space, time. Everything becomes symmetrical regarding space and time. Nothing exists in space that does not thereby have an exact counterpart in imaginary space. Just as there is real numbered energy, there is also imaginary numbered energy. And we can also carry out exactly the same exercise with regard to positive and negative numbers, to positive and negative energy, mass, length and time. Real numbers can never be privileged over imaginary numbers, and positive numbers can never be privileged over negative numbers. Science disastrously commits both of these flagrant errors in order to serve its real positivist philosophy of materialism and empiricism. Science's philosophy is wholly fallacious, yet it refuses to debate it, thus demonstrating that scientists are nothing but quasi-religious fanatics with an evangelical disposition. They despise reason and logic. They reject rationalism. Like priests, rabbis, imams and gurus, they're too illiterate to deal with philosophers, so, exactly like these religious extremists, they shut down the whole discussion. They are people of faith, not of reason. They believe in their ideology, even though it is manifestly and provably false. Such is the autistic, inflexible, unimaginative scientific mind. Scientists once walked hand in hand with deterministic mathematicians. Now they are amongst their bitterest enemies, and all because they have sworn their allegiance to their empiricist philosophy rather than rationalist mathematics. The results of special relativity can be summarized by treating space and time as a unified structure known as spacetime, with C relating the units of space and time, and requiring that physical theories satisfy a special symmetry called Lorentz invariance, whose mathematical formulation contains the parameter C. Wikipedia. If space and time can be treated as unified structure known as spacetime, this should obviously be a 6D spacetime rather than 4D. You would immediately have to provide a sufficient reason for the proposed asymmetry. Science never does, and never can. The speed of light, c, relates the units of space and time, precisely because space and time come from light. Science vehemently denies this obvious and self-evident rational truth. The speed of light is the invariant constant in the Lorentz transformations, exactly because light, the basis of mind, defines the spacetime world of matter. Lorentz invariance is an almost universal assumption for modern physical theories, such as quantum electrodynamics, quantum chromodynamics, the standard model of particle physics, and general relativity. As such, the parameter C is ubiquitous in modern physics, appearing in many contexts that are unrelated to light. Wikipedia. The speed of light is ubiquitous in modern physics, because light is the true root of the whole of physics. The material world of spacetime is simply a world of broken light. Light that has lost its orthogonality via Fourier mathematics.